Hello and welcome to this latest Fellside midweek reflection. During these days of restrictions, one of the books that I've reread recently has been this one by Adrian Plass and Jeff Lucas, entitled All Questions Great and Small. And basically what's happened is that in the past these two writers and preachers have toured around together, and part of that evening has to be answer questions from the audience. And some of those questions have been quite serious, and so serious answers, but these two writers and preachers and their great sense of humour, there's times when there's real laugh out moments as well. But for the purpose of this reflection, I do want to share with you a question that was asked of Adrian Plass, quite a serious question. How can we make sure, the question goes, that in our ministry to others, the policies we adopt properly represent the will of God? And I'm just going to read his answer to you, or part of that answer for now, and then a short Bible reading. And he begins by saying that one of the features that seems to be absent in far too much of what we call Christian ministry is the simple belief that there really is a God who really is present when we talk or pray or eat or play badminton or chop vegetables or sing Handel's Messiah with people. And it seems reasonable to assume that this God has a specific view of each situation and a specific notion of what might be the best approach to take with the person or the people concerned. When this fundamental assumption is lacking, we become hungry for policies. We want to know what to think and what to say, how to react, how to proceed. And the theory is that once we have our checklist, we can simply apply it to any issue or problem that is presented to us. That is why, in the context of our normal expectations, God appears to be randomly and sometimes disturbingly disruptive. It was ever thus, he says. And I'll put that on pause at this point and read to us some verses from John chapter 9, and beginning at verse 1. And this is the account of the man born blind who receives his sight. As Jesus walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's work might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva and spread the mud on the man's eyes, saying to him, go, wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. Then he went and washed and came back able to see. The neighbours and those who had seen him before as a beggar began to ask, is this not the man who used to sit and beg? Some were saying, it is he. Others were saying, no, but it is someone like him. He kept saying, I am the man. But they kept asking him, then how were your eyes opened? He answered, the man called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes and said to me, go to Siloam and wash. Then I went and washed and received my sight. They said to him, where is he? He said, I do not know. And to go back to Adrian Plass's answer to that question. So, a man blind from birth. A paraphrase of what happened. A man blind from birth. So what's the policy here then, Lord? Somebody's fault, obviously. So would that be the man himself or his parents? Neither, says Jesus, but his blindness is a chance for the world to see the good things of God. the man is healed, and his subsequent encounter with the infuriated Pharisees is one of the few truly funny passages in the New Testament. Real pantomime stuff, says Adrian Plass. Read it, imagine it. And to see if he's right, you might like to read the rest of that story in John chapter 9. But even more instructively, he continues, for those of us who truly want to understand and try to represent the heart of God. In the previous chapter, in John, we have the account of the adulterous woman who's been dragged along by the Pharisees so that Jesus can be trapped into speaking out against the law. And they must have felt very confident about their ploy. They believed that they knew three things for sure, and they were absolutely right. The first was that the punishment for adultery was stoning. Correct. The law of Moses was quite clear. The second was that Jesus had revealed himself to be someone who, because of his compassion towards wrongdoers and his profound abhorrence of cruelty, would never be able to sit quietly by and allow a woman to be stoned to death in front of his eyes. Thirdly, he had carefully made clear that his teaching was not in conflict with the law. On the contrary, he publicly declared that it was easier for heaven and earth to disappear than for the least stroke of a pen to drop out of the law. So there it was. They'd got him. If he tried to save her, he would be identified as the one who sided with lawbreakers. If he agreed with the stoning, he would deny his own nature, and the force of his teaching would be significantly diluted. So a little more paraphrasing. It perhaps went like this. We were just wanting to check with you, says the Pharisees innocently, about the correct policy with this woman who has committed adultery. Stoning, isn't it? According to the law, that is. And Jesus begins to write in the dust. And he says nothing. Slightly uneasy clearing of throats all around. So, should we start the stoning or? Jesus looks up. Sorry, the stoning. Well, yes, as you say, that's the law. Better get on with it. So who's going to start? Oh, I know. What about this? Whichever one of you has never committed a sin, you can be the first one to throw a stone. Okay, sorted. I'll just get back to my writing. And of course, we know the ending. There is no stoning. The woman goes off to sort out her life. The policy concerning adultery, as stated in the law, remains intact, but the higher, heavenly policy of love and redemption has started to work its stuff. So, there seems to be some pretty clear lessons. First, and this is still what Adrian Plass writes, by the way. First, we are not called upon to police the lives of those who come to us for help. If he does not condemn, they're now in the blue blazes, as Adrian's mother used to say, can we? I have known many Christians who have been nervous of letting God down by appearing to condone sin, that they allow no room for the sympathetic transforming power of the Holy Spirit. Having said that, there will be occasions when some very straight talking is required. But the bottom line, and this is the bad news for those who love neat solutions and clear boundaries, is that no easily identifiable bottom line is to be found. There is no way of knowing what God will do in any given situation. Whatever he may have done last Thursday or the Tuesday before that. Issues of adultery will not be solved by applying the drawing in the dust, not saying anything, then saying something, and then drawing in the dust again kind of method. It won't work. Something else will work. So, what might all that mean in practice? And Adrian Plass gives the example of when he was in Northern Ireland. I presume he means that he'd been invited on a tour and to go around to different churches and venues and the like. And he was sitting with two quite elderly men called Brian and William, who had come to ask for prayer, but were reluctant to express their problem unless he was able to promise that their conversation would remain confidential. So, he assures them of that. Even so, the silence before either of them spoke was lengthy. Silences can be fragile. Breaking them is not usually a helpful thing to do. The thing is, said Brian at last, William and I are, well, we're one of those what they call same-sex couples. Have been for years and years. Folk in our church think we're cousins because that's what we've told them, said William. If they knew the truth, there'd be no place for us in the church here, not unless we changed. We've been here all our lives. Anyway, continued Brian, his voice breaking very slightly, William here has had some tests, and it's bad news. Cancer. He might have 6 months. We wanted someone to know all about us and suggest what we should do and just say a little prayer. And Adrian felt that God had spoken to him. So using his trademark get-out clause, he would say that if God does speak to cloth-eared Christians like me, and if he spoke on this occasion, this is what he said. Leave them alone. Just leave them alone. I love these two, and I don't want any great truth-telling sessions or sledgehammer ministry ruining the last part of their lives together. Say a prayer, wish them well, and give them my love. The rest is nothing to do with you. His imagination, he says, could be. Paul says that faith, hope, and love are the only 3 things that last. Not much about certainty. I always retreat from certainty. It's a policy with me, concludes Adrian in the answer to that question. And we need to note there that the question he was asked was not, is our relationship wrong? What does the Bible have to say on this? It was actually quite a delicate pastoral situation. And it got me thinking of the church here in our Fellside team. And would people be able in our churches to express themselves of who they are and what they are? Those 2 men were very fearful they would have been condemned in their own church. And again, the life that they were living, they weren't asking if that was right or wrong or what the Bible says. They just needed some pastoral support at a very difficult time of life. But there could be many, many other examples. What about someone who was abused as a child and feels so full of hurt and resentment and bitterness? Would they be able to share that in our churches? What about someone who's addicted to drugs? Or someone who struggles with internet pornography? Of course, I don't mean that people come and stand up at the front of a church at the beginning of a service and say, well, this is what I'm struggling with, this is how it is, because obviously that can lead to gossip and problems in its own right. But other people in our churches who they can go to, who they feel that they could trust, who they could go and have coffee and cake with and say, well, this is how it is. I would like to think that such a welcome would be there in our Fellside team to pray with someone, and in the way that Adrian did with those men. And to close this reflection, a while ago, it's probably a couple of years or more even now, certainly at Bilsborough Church, and I think I also told this story at Whitechapel Church, and it was the story of a very young lady who started to go along to church. But the thing is, this young lady, this young girl, was a stripper. But she'd started to ask questions about God, and the church where she went was quite a lively church with a music group, and she always wanted to be where the action was, so to speak. So she would always sit at the front. And the story goes that when she walked down the central aisle, that ladies would shield their husband's eyes because her blouses were so low and her skirts were so high. But the point is that that particular congregation, and it is a true story, just loved that girl and accepted her as she was. And finally, under the Spirit of God, she had grown in faith, and she realised, and she said to folk at the church, I shouldn't really be doing this for a living, should I? It's about time I found something else to do. But the point is that they loved that young lady, that young woman, through that time in her life, until she had grown to such a point in faith that she realised that what she was doing wasn't right and changed her life accordingly. But isn't that a great story of love, acceptance and tolerance by a particular congregation? And that congregation is a great example to each and every other church congregation. So when people are struggling, people who may be in our congregations now, people who may be struggling on those on our fringes within our communities, whether they struggle with same-sex attraction, whether they're tempted by drugs or internet pornography, whatever it may be, do they feel able to talk about that and to express who they really are? So what a fantastic challenge that is from the question that was asked in that book. And as I reread that, I did feel that it was well worth sharing, because it does pose some challenging questions and does give us, I think, much food for thought. And yes, so I shall leave it at that point, and hopefully we will think, be challenged, and even be encouraged by those stories. And do have a look at the rest of John chapter 9 and that account of the blind man as it continues, who received his sight, and see if you agree with Adrian Plass that it is indeed pantomime stuff. And so, until the next time, as always, bye for now. Bye.